Hello everyone, this is a quick little video about a project I'm about to start here, taking this old Atari 2600 and turning it into a bit more modern emulation PC. So I bought this Atari on eBay for about $15. It was listed as broken for parts. So all it came with was the console here and the coaxial cable for the video and audio. So I know this has been taken apart already because these coaxial cables come plugged into the circuit board inside there. So I know someone has been in there to unplug it and take this out. But be that as it may, let's dig in and see what we got. First off, before we take it apart, I noticed this is the 6-button version of the 2600, which is one of the earlier versions from 1977 on to 1980. In 1980, they changed to a 4-button layout. I will readily admit these consoles are a bit before my time, so while I'm familiar with most of the classic Atari arcade games, I had never actually handled or checked out one of these 2600s before now, so it's been an interesting learning experience for me. But let's go ahead and take it apart. Once you get those apart, top cover simply lifts off and you're presented with the circuit board. When I opened this up, I was shocked to see how much room is actually in here. This is not a very large motherboard at all. There's tons of empty space in here, which is good for future modding. Here we have the circuit board with the 6 toggle switches. I really like the feel of these toggle switches. There's something back about those 70s and 80s. They just have so much purchase on it. It's just a nice, satisfying switch. So I will be reusing these switches in my project. The power one on the end here and the reset one have pretty obvious translations to a more modern computer. Not so with the game select one here, the color selection if you have color or black and white TV, or the difficulty A and B for the left and right players. If you have any ideas on how I can use those, let me know. Just for reference, the color one, the game difficulty ones, those are all toggle switches, and the game select one lever here is just a momentary switch, so it returns back to its state. Anyway, got any ideas? Let me know. Then, once this comes out, I've already taken this off the bottom here. There's a plate that comes off, and you can pull out the circuit board. As I said before, there's really not very much to it. Just unplug the ribbon cable from the back there, and this comes right out, like so. Set that aside for a second. One thing that was really fascinating to me was this EMF cover on the top here. This is a solid cast metal part, and I was reading on the iFixit teardown of another 2600 that this is for EMF shielding. I've never seen an EMF shield quite like this before. I would guess it's due to the sensitivity of analog components and the fact that the AV out here is a RF signal for the need for all of this shielding, but it's a really substantial piece and it's easily the most heavy component of the whole thing. So I found that pretty interesting. Set that aside. Going back to the motherboard here, I was looking over this. They said on the listing that it was broken, so typically when I get broken electronics, I look over the circuit boards just to see if something is burned out or heavy corrosion on any of the contacts, the obvious things you would look for. I don't see anything that stands out in this case. Definitely no burned out components, and amazingly there doesn't even seem to be any signs of corrosion. So despite the age of this console, everything appears to be in pretty great shape, which is pretty amazing. The thing I love about these old circuit boards is everything is hand soldered in place there. So if I did find say a capacitor, like this capacitor here is blown out or something, it's very simple for me to bust out the soldering iron and replace it. So I think I will dig into this. I had planned on this being just a total write-off and discarding it, but since it appears to be in good nick, in a future video I will do some more exploration into if there's anything at all wrong with this, and they just said it was broken because they didn't have the power cable or controllers, or if there is something wrong with this. So stay tuned for that. Now, looking at what I have to work with for this case, I've got some posts here. In order to fit an ITX motherboard, these will absolutely have to go. This post here is for some cable management, strain relief, so you don't yank the video port out. That will have to go as well. Looking on the back here, I'd like to avoid destroying the look of this back here. I don't know if that's how feasible that was going to be, but if you can see, there's a very slight ridge around here, and I'd like to try and stay within that confines if possible. Now obviously an ITX is not going to fit this exactly. I was thinking about only breaking out the components that I need, such as HDMI, a couple USB ports, out of the motherboard with cables, and putting the ports out here so I don't have to have the full suite of ITX ports at the back here, the motherboard ports, because I'm not going to use very many of them at all. But we'll see what that's like when we dig into the computer teardown. Aside from that, going back to the front plate here, turn the console back around. This vinyl graphic here that has all of the descriptions of what the buttons do is cracking, it's peeling, it's old. I'd like to get a new one made that has the new labels for whatever all these switches do. So power on and off will probably stay the same. Game reset, I might switch to computer reset or something like that. And then the 4 in the middle, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. And then change the name here to like video emulation system or something subtle like that, using the same font. I think that would look kind of cool. The cartridge port is an interesting one. I've seen Microsoft, I think they put an i7, they did some special gaming computer build, and they put an i7 in here, and they had the cooling fans ducting through this cartridge port. I'm only using an i3 for my build, so I don't need a massive cooling solution, and I'd like to preserve the functionality of this being a cartridge slot, so you are loading the game files into this, and I think I can do that by putting a small SSD or maybe an SD card reader into an actual Atari console, Atari cartridge, and then breaking the port reader out to a USB port or maybe SATA, since there are ample pins underneath there, if you can see that, or if just look on the bottom you can see all of the pins here. So I could break those out and just use this as the connector. So if I want to load in new files or anything like that, I put them on the cartridge separately and then click this in, and then it boots to that. I think that would be pretty cool and something that I might challenge myself to do. Well, that's it for the moment. The next video I will be digging into the computer that I've chosen for this build. Sneak preview, it is a Dell Optiplex, and I'll go into why I chose that shortly. But until then, take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Well, that sounds like garbage. That's not the way to do that.